companies back to back telling people how to fix the sickness on the same stuff that they sell them. So we get it.
Yep, we get it too, Chuck D. And that's why at KBLA Talk 1580, we don't black down.
Drop it! Our freedom of speech is freedom of death. We got to fight the powers that be. Fight the power! Fight the power! Fight the power!
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Our very special guest is the mayor of the city of Chicago. The Honorable Brandon Johnson proudly serves as the 57th mayor of Chicago, a dedicated American educator and public servant. Mayor Johnson was sworn into office in May of 2023, marking a continuation of his commitment to public service and community empowerment. Mayor Johnson has consistently championed causes that promote equity and justice. His journey into politics was deeply influenced by his upbringing in a working-class community as one of 10 children. The loss of his mother to heart disease due to lack of access to quality health care in the face of family financial challenges ignited his commitment to address systemic issues affecting marginalized communities. The Honorable Mayor Johnson devoted nearly 2 decades to public service, working as an educator in the Chicago public school system. His experiences at Jenner Academy Elementary School and in Cabrini Green neighborhoods solidified his dedication to social and economic justice, witnessing the disparities faced by bright and promising students amid poverty, unemployment, and violence. Mayor Johnson is a family man residing on the west side of Chicago with his wife, Stacy, and their children, Owen, Ethan, and Braden. This year saw, 2023, Mayor Johnson's mayoral aspirations come to fruition in a competitive race. He emerged as a frontrunner, forcing a runoff with the ultimately unseated the incumbent mayor. Johnson's victory in the runoff secured his place as the 57th mayor of the city of Chicago. Mayor Brandon Johnson continues to be a beacon of hope and positive change, striving to make Chicago a city that embodies justice, equity, and opportunities for all. I am very proud that the mayor of the city of Chicago is joining me today live in Los Angeles. Your Honor, welcome to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Hey, good afternoon, Jesse. Thank you for your leadership and your dedication to this country. And I'm great to be on with you all as we discuss all the critical issues that our nation is facing.
These are very trying times, Mr. Mayor, and I know that our break is coming up shortly. Let me first check in with you. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm well. I'm strong and determined. As you know, our country has faced many challenges over the course of centuries now, and the unwavering commitment that our people have had in this country that has caused this democracy to continue to evolve and point closer towards justice. I still stand on those shoulders of those who have come before me. So though there are very discouraging moments in this time, our faith is still strong.
I know firsthand that the burden of the responsibilities that you accept also end up at home. How's your family holding up under your leadership and under?
Yeah, thank you for that question. They are just, first of all, they are the center of my joy, as the great songwriter once recorded. And my wife of 26 years has been just rock solid, and my children. Owen is headed into his senior year. You know what that's like as they are starting to become closer to being adults and wanting to know how to drive. And so he is doing an incredible job being a big brother to Ethan and Braden, 11 and 13 Braden will be 11th in July. But they have their lives too, Jesse. They don't sit around and wait for dad to entertain them. As you know, we're still not the most popular people in our home. In fact, for a long time, I answered to Mommy Said. They would literally approach me, and that's how they would greet me. Mommy Said. So that is, still my name for the most part around the house, but they're doing great. They just ended the school year, so summer just began for us here in Chicago, and they were up late as we were, just kind of messing around, but they're doing very well. Thank you for asking.
And there are also a number of very dedicated men and women who work for you and your team, and they're working under extraordinary circumstances. How's your staff holding up?
Yeah, just like my family, they're solid, but we need you to keep us in your prayers. As you know, with this work, you get a lot of mileage when you're working for the people, and there's wear and tear that occurs as a result of the intensity of this work. But these individuals are incredibly dedicated to helping me build the safest, most affordable big city in America. But we certainly need as much support on the ground, organizing and still pushing government to do right by people, as well as your thoughts and prayers. But we're still strong here in Chicago.
Long before the National Guard showed up in Los Angeles, Mayor Brandon Johnson has been championing the cause of sanctuary cities and the rights of men and women who are yearning to breathe free. When we come forward, we will share some of the experiences that Mayor Johnson has had, some lessons that have been learned from the people here in Los Angeles that could impact cities all across our country. Our very special guest in this hour on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show is none other than the Mayor of the City of Chicago, the Honorable Brandon Johnson, when we come forward.
The station you turn to when you had it up to gear with cultural incompetence. KBLA Talk 1580.
LA's newest soul food restaurant is getting spectacular reviews. Great place with amazing food. The Sunday champagne brunch is fabulous. I saw the place on IG. We tried it for lunch. We were blown away by the food and the service. The restaurant has an inviting atmosphere and a dynamic vibe. Over the years, Lionel has catered most major Black events in Los Angeles, including all of our KBLA Talk 1580 gatherings. But now he has his own spot, Lionel's Soul Food Cuisine, and you need to check it out at 8501 South Vermont Avenue in Los Angeles. Oxtails, baked or fried chicken, meatloaf, turkey chops, pork chops, catfish, short ribs, and all the fixins. Collard greens, mac and cheese, yams, red beans, black-eyed peas, and more. And of course, hot water cornbread, satisfying drinks, and delicious desserts. Lionel's is a great place for brunch, lunch, or dinner. If it's good enough for us, it's good enough for you, because we've got your black. So head on over to Lionel's Soul Food Cuisine at 8501 South Vermont Avenue in Los Angeles and tell Lionel you heard about it on KBLA Talk 1580.
$5,000. That's the average amount of money people in the U.S. are now spending on gas in a year. $5,000. That's crazy. If you drive, you have to download Upside, the free app that gives you cash back every time you get gas. That's right. You can earn real cash back with Upside just by buying the gas you're already buying. You can literally start earning cash back today.
I use Upside every time I fill up, and I've already made around $300.
You're putting gas in your car anyway. Why not get real cash back? If you like free money, download Upside.
I'm saving the cash I earn from using Upside to help pay for a vacation later this year.
Download the free Upside app now to earn cash back every time you buy gas. Use promo code PUSH to get an extra 25 cents per gallon on your first tank. You can cash out anytime right to your bank, PayPal, or a gift card for Amazon and other brands. Just download the free Upside app and use promo code PUSH for a 25 cents per gallon bonus on your first tank. That's code PUSH for a 25 cents per gallon bonus.
KBLA Talk 1580 congratulates Pastor and Mrs. William Sachs Epps on their retirement from stewardship at the historic Second Baptist Church. Dr. Epps has faithfully served Second Baptist as its senior pastor for 37 years. What a legacy of love and leadership. Pastor and Mrs. Epps will be honored at a luncheon on Saturday, July 26, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Sheraton Universal Hotel in Universal City, and you're invited to attend. Noted scholar scholar, Dr. Michael Eric Dyson is the keynote speaker. For ticket information, please contact epsretirement@gmail.com or call 213-399-2103. That's epsretirement@gmail.com or call 213-399-2103. To Pastor Epps and First Lady Epps, congratulations from all of us at KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580, where hate meets a scholarly match.
Hey!
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Mayor Johnson, so honored to have you as our very special guest.
Thank you for having me, and congratulations, Congressman, on your incredible voice, and looking forward to having these conversations in the future again.
Mayor Johnson, let me set the stage for a little bit of historical perspective, something that I think gets lost, but I've been listening to your speeches very carefully about why this issue of sanctuary cities, the work that you've been doing, isn't so much political as it is right. Taking the right position at this moment not only matters against the backdrop of history, but it matters against the backdrop of the lives of men and women who are yearning to breathe free. And the core, if you will, of this republic. Mayor, as you well know, on July 4th, 1776, this nation was founded on the principles of equality. Jefferson wrote, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." Martin Luther King Jr. referred to these words as magnificent when he gave the "I Have a Dream" speech. He was talking about July 4th, 1776. Now we close in on July 4th, 2025, almost the 249th anniversary of this declaration. On July 4th, 1863, there were 87 July 4ths that African Americans could not claim, given their condition of slavery, citizenship rights. It is in this context that led to first Reconstruction, second Reconstruction, the Civil Rights Act, the Civil Rights Movement, and even before that, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments that led to citizenship rights that, in a real sense, explain our story as African Americans and ultimately the American story, the Exodus experience for us. I don't know a champion in the United States who has been clearer on this issue of why we must stand for men and women who are yearning to breathe free from a historical perspective than you. Your Honor, share with us why your commitment is so strong and why our community must be engaged in fighting for human rights.
Yeah, thank you for that question and that framing. To sum up almost 250 years of history within a couple of minutes, that's impressive. You know, even for a social studies teacher like myself, it's important to have that historical context because without it, it can lead to poor decisions or even worse, repeating past poor decisions. And this experiment here in America, the evolution of our democracy has always been through the lens, I believe, of those of us who were enslaved, right? Because those words meant very little, if anything, for those of us who were in captivity. In fact, the W.B. Du Bois often talked about the question of what to do with the Negro. That has been the question in this country for a very long time. And so as I think about the liberation, if you will, from tyranny, from a European empire, to discover a space where you can have a united front around what it would mean for anyone and everyone to be able to have happiness through the lens of liberation, that is something that we still long for in this country as Black folks. And so when I think about welcoming city and sanctuary city, this is not a newer phenomenon. This is just another sort of iteration of our democracy. And, one last thing that I'll say is this, is that when you think about just the formation of this country between indigenous people and descendants of slaves, the same forces that eradicated indigenous folks from this land placed us into servitude as Black enslaved people. The same system that wants to continue to colonize and dominate the planet are using these false narratives to divide the very people that they were sent to conquer. Right? And so now here we are, almost 250 years later, where there's more political power, at least the seats of power for our people, descendants of slaves, and those who are still working to relitigate or call for a rematch of the Civil War are using the same tactics to divide Black, brown, Asian, poor white folks across America to believe that somehow we are each other's enemy, where in fact it's always been about the absolute dominance and control of a handful of people. And if we're going to see this document really reach the lives of people who go beyond maybe what the framers had in mind, it's going to be critically important that our communities remain united and pushing for our democracy to continue to evolve. And that means protecting the most vulnerable, whether you are a descendant of slaves or whether you are an immigrant from around the world. The city of Chicago, I believe, embodies that so eloquently, because we're talking about a city that was established by a Black Haitian immigrant who fell in love with a Potawatomi woman and set up a trade post at the bank of the river, believing one day that the city of Chicago would be the global capital of the world. And that's what we're imbibing right now in the city of Chicago, but that's what we're working to protect and expand. But that is what we're also being attacked by, is through those lens of division and not the things that actually unite us.
Your Honor, I often remind our listeners that there have been a number of occasions, but the most important ones, at least for the purposes of this conversation, where federal troops, in the case of the colonists, the British had troops here in the colonies, and therefore a revolutionary war took place. But before the Constitution, that's essentially the most significant event in that history. But from the Declaration of Independence in 1776 to the Constitution in 1787, it wouldn't be until first Reconstruction over the question of freeing slaves and the freedmen in the South, that Northern troops, United States colored troops, and men and women who fought for the Union would be in the South, occupying the South until such time as the Tilden-Hayes Compromise, and they were withdrawn. Federal government was withdrawn. There have been other occasions when John Lewis was walking across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, and when Ruby Bridges with the U.S. Marshals needed federal assistance to get into schools, and the Little Rock Nine. There have been other occasions, but no group of people have experienced the federal government coming in to their communities quite like African Americans. And so we have a foundation for our arguments that when we say with an African American mayor in New York, an African American mayor yourself in Chicago, an African American mayor in Los Angeles, an African American mayor in Atlanta, cities that historically did not have African American mayors, that we are particularly sensitive as we fight for people's human rights, that the federal government now finds itself on the other side of our struggle as we fight for men and women who cannot fight for themselves. Your thoughts on that, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, well, look, you framed it very well. Again, we're living in this, backwards world right now where historically, particularly for our people, where the federal government had to come in order to institute justice, where we're seeing the opposite of that, where the federal government is being used to violate, people's constitutional rights. And you're absolutely right when it comes to the overall struggle for our humanity, in which we can never surrender. That's really what this federal apparatus is calling for. President Donald Trump wants us to surrender our humanity. And the moment we do that, you lose your democracy, right? And then you can not only other people, but you can objectify them to conditions that are inhumane. And that's why I believe in this moment, there's such an historic connection here in Chicago. The first Black mayor in the history of Chicago, his corporate council, who was the first Black corporate council in the history of this city, called for a welcoming city ordinance and organized the city of Chicago to fight against any federal agents that would work to force local municipalities to engage in federal operations, giving more authoritarian power to a police force. The corporate counsel, James Montgomery, who called for Harold Washington to institute Sanctuary City, was also the attorney for the Black Panther Party. And so I think you see where I'm going. Corporate counsel James Montgomery understood, particularly at a time in Chicago where it was well documented that the police department was torturing Black men and forcing them into these false confessions, while the state's attorney actually corroborated these forced confessions, which now literally the city of Chicago is paying restitution for, 40, 50 years later, to give local authority, federal authority to implement immigration policy would be an overreach. And so now 40 years later, I, as Black mayor, my first Black woman corporate counsel in the history of Chicago, we're defending our humanity through the lens of our own personal experiences as Black folks here in America. And that's why it's incumbent upon us to understand what's happening here. The erosion of our Constitution, relitigating the results of the Civil War. This is a concerted effort to not only divide this nation, but to conquer it using the federal government to ensure that the ultra rich in this country and in this world get benefit where the rest of us are fighting one another over our right to even exist. And so, yes, there is a very profound connection between the Black liberation movement and challenging, particularly not just the state, but the federal government to protect our constitutional rights. Because it's pretty straightforward for me, Congressman Jackson, either you support the Constitution or you do not. And here in Chicago, and I believe Black mayors and other allies of justice around this country recognize that it's incumbent upon us to ensure that the erosion of our democracy doesn't come at the hands of the type of tyranny that's coming from Washington, D.C. right now.
Let me just add to that, Your Honor, as we prepare to celebrate another Juneteenth or commemorate a Juneteenth holiday, that we often hear in our community and even in social studies and history classes about the Underground Railroad. The Underground Railroad stops in Chicago, y'all. It stops in Detroit. It stops in Philadelphia. The whole point was to make it to New York. The whole point was to get out of slavery and end up in Los Angeles. The Underground Railroad points of getting out of slavery brought us to these cities that would later be called sanctuary cities. We did end up in segregation, but we were going somewhere from a condition. And so it seems to me that Abbott and these governors in the South, DeSantis, then took advantage of that history by trying to turn our story on its head, when in fact our story is the exact same story that Senator Padilla is experiencing right now. This is how our African-American senators and congressmen were treated in first Reconstruction. This is exactly how Adam Clayton Powell and John Lewis and others who fought to make America one nation under God, indivisible with liberty and justice for all. This is exactly what we went through, Your Honor.
You're absolutely right. And, going back to the Reconstruction era, there were 5 very simple demands that descendants of slaves were fighting for: housing, education, jobs, healthcare, and transportation. I've added a friendly amendment, environmental justice, to that list. But if you think about the demands that working people across America have, housing, right? We need affordability, education. In other words, making sure that our public accommodations are fully supported. Again, housing, education, transportation, right? But as transportation moves, it dictates how communities grow. We think about healthcare, right? As well as ensuring, that we have good paying jobs. And so when you look at all the areas in which the president of the United States of America is attacking, DOGE was an attack on the very Reconstruction demands that descendants of slaves had. You go after federal employees, you go after HUD, right? You go after education, you go after transportation, you start cutting people's jobs and access to healthcare and food, right? I mean, we're talking about very basic fundamental rights that we have longed for. And so those are things that all of America can enjoy. And so that's why this fight is so critical in this moment. I think about Brandon Scott, right? Think about Mayor Bibbs, right? We think about Cavalier Johnson in Milwaukee, the number of Black mayors across this country that are living out the hopes and aspirations of our ancestors, bringing all different groups together. It's an incredible moment for us to actually fulfill the promises and the hopes of our ancestors, but we also have to be prepared to defend what we've already won.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to the Honorable Brandon Johnson, the mayor of the city of Chicago. When we come forward, we're going to talk about some of the lessons of Los Angeles, because the National Guard, Kristi Noem, Donald Trump, they're all coming our way. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. When we come forward, an in-depth conversation with the mayor of Chicago.
Say the quiet part out loud. KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. NYPD is preparing for a large No King's Day protest Saturday with thousands of officers on standby. Black New York City Mayor Eric Adams is warning that crime and disorder will not be tolerated.
We will not allow violence and lawlessness.
Security is also being increased at Jewish and Israeli sites amid global tensions following Israel's strike on Iran. The 2026 Grammys are making changes, including a new category for Best Traditional Country Album. Best Country Album will now be called Best Contemporary Country Album. Beyonce won in that category this year. And authorities are searching for 4 detainees after a riot at Newark, New Jersey's ICE facility. Immigrant rights groups say it stemmed from poor treatment, including lack of food and visitation. Black Mayor Ras Baraka called out the lack of oversight, and a recently released detainee spoke out about the conditions. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Is your concrete cracking? Is your uneven walkway dangerous? Do you need to level that concrete porch or patio? Contact Groundworks, the concrete lifting experts. Riverside, get your free inspection today. Learn more at groundworks.com.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The NBA Finals resumes tonight with Game 4 in Indianapolis. The Indiana Pacers are up 2-1 over the Oklahoma City Thunder. Before the finals, OKC was a heavy favorite to win the NBA championship. A lot of chatter is circulating around the country now favoring Indiana. Folks believe if Indiana wins tonight, they will take a huge step toward winning their first NBA title in franchise history. Not many people believe OKC can beat the Pacers 3 straight times if they lose tonight. 5:30 tip-off on ABC. The Dodgers and Angels are back in action tonight. The Dodgers start a 10-game homestand tonight. First game is against San Francisco. The Angels begin a 7-game road trip tonight at Baltimore. Angels manager Ron Washington, one of only 2 black managers in Major League Baseball, has seen his team play pretty well lately. The Angels are 7-3 in their last 10 games. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
Attorney advertising. Prior results do not guarantee future outcomes.
Founded in Los Angeles in 1986, litigation powerhouse Quinn Emanuel has deep roots in the Los Angeles community. Since 2007, we have litigated some of the largest fires on the West Coast. We are proud to be the only AmLaw 100 firm in the country to represent wildfire victims, giving affected individuals, families, and businesses the same focus and individualized attention we devote to our Fortune 500 clients. BTI Consulting has repeatedly recognized Quinn Emanuel as among the 4 law firms in-house counsel least liked to oppose in any litigation, and we are often deemed the most feared. And after securing over $80 billion for our clients in various matters firm-wide, we understand why. If you have been affected by the recent wildfires in Altadena and the Palisades and would like to discuss your situation further, please contact wildfire support at QuinnEmanuel.com or call us at 213-443-3050. Quinn Emanuel is proud to sponsor Conversation Live Altadena Rising with James Farr on KBLA Talk 1580.
Attorney advertising. Prior results do not guarantee future outcomes.
1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. You ready?
Somebody make some noise in this joint.
KBLA Talk 1580 celebrates its 4th anniversary this year on Juneteenth.
Here we go again.
Hard to believe 4 years has gone by so fast.
Oh my God.
But here we are, still standing, still loving and serving our people as best we can.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
To celebrate our 4th anniversary, we have 4 big events, and you're invited to all of them.
She got a lot to say. Let's do this.
Let's get it on! On Wednesday, June 18th, we go live on C-SPAN for the 2nd consecutive year with our Climate Justice plus Black Health Symposium. Tavis Smiley will moderate an all-star panel of thinkers and influencers as we continue our vitally important climate justice work.
Hey, Tavis Smiley, talk about.
On Thursday, June 19th, you're invited to join us as we celebrate Juneteenth and our 4th anniversary. There will be plenty of food, fun, great music, good vibes, and all of your favorite KBLA Talk 1580 hosts will be there.
Yeah, man.
Took the beat. On Saturday, June 21st, there are 2 big events you're invited to attend.
I can't wait to hear it.
This year, KBLA Talk 1580 continues its annual partnership with the Empowerment Congress for a community celebration and dialogue to educate, engage, and empower. This year's theme is resilience in the face of chaos.
Can't wait to see what's up next.
Y'all ain't ready for this.
And new this year is our State of Black Women in Los Angeles Symposium, moderated by Dominique DePrima, with a luncheon to follow. Dominique will be leading a dialogue with some of the most impactful Black women leaders in Los Angeles, and you're invited to join.
This is it.
All of these events are free, but seating is limited, so you must register in advance at our KBLA1580.com website, where you can find all the details you need about each event.
Check it out.
It's our 4th anniversary, and we would love to celebrate it with you.
I love you guys so much. There's nothing you can do about it.
We're KBLA Talk 1580.
The only black talk radio station west of the Mississippi.
Thank you for having our black.
Happy anniversary, KBLA.
Love you. Love you.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we do more than just talk.
You got a big mouth.
Hello, Joe. You're up. Welcome.
We're unapologetically progressive, and we don't black down.
Junior show. My very special guest is the Honorable Brandon Johnson, the mayor of the city of Chicago. Your Honor, welcome back to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Hey, thanks for having me again. I appreciate the time.
Your Honor, let me pivot, if you might allow me to lessons learned. I'm here on the ground in Los Angeles, and the 4,000 plus 700 Marines, possibly expanding, are within 1 square mile of the ICE headquarters in Los Angeles. Obviously, from that system of pre-positioning of troops, They'll be within the context of the ICE headquarters in Chicago, within the context of the confines of the ICE headquarters in the various cities throughout the country. But clearly, this number of troops means that they are planning on expanding the perimeter of that to larger areas within a city. One of the lessons from being here on the ground is this: when they come, and if Donald Trump invokes the Insurrection Act, and I feel like he's itching to do it, he will expand beyond the federal buildings to other areas in the city where there is reaction to what is taking place. And you could end up with federal troops in Roseland, federal troops in South Shore, federal troops on the south side of Chicago. Is there a way for those of us who believe in the nonviolent Dr. King tradition to separate the protests and the behaviors that we engage in nonviolently from the agent provocateurs? Can we be in Grant Park and not over there in those men's faces, in those troop spaces? Is there somewhere we can be?
Yep.
I'm sorry, Your Honor. Go ahead, please.
No, I was going to say, first of all, in Chicago, there's a long history of protest in Chicago, and as well as just organizing to push for real substantive change. My administration has been solely focused on really bringing equity and justice to the neighborhoods in which you were just naming, on the south side and on the west side of Chicago, where my wife and I are raising our children, in neighborhoods like Austin and Garfield Park. Garfield Park has been described as a developing nation because
violence and poverty per capita reflects, nations that are severely starved and under-resourced. So we have our challenges in Chicago, the southeast side of Chicago, where there's been no development for 30 years, not since I arrived with a brand new investment in Psi Quantum. So we have historically had a number of neighborhoods that have fought for justice, environmental justice, housing justice. When Dr. King was here, you mentioned him. He took on Richard J. Daley. The room that is literally right next to me is where Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And another educator by the name of Al Raby looked Richard J. Daley in the face, Mayor Daley in the face, and called for affordable housing, of which we're doing now in Chicago. Here we are, almost 60 years later, calling for more public housing. And so in other words, whether it's the labor movement or the civil rights movement, as Dr. King eloquently described at the 1967, I believe, AFSCME convention, that if those two elements were to ever collide, what enormous potential it would have. And I'm paraphrasing. And so, Dr. King also said, if we can get it right in Chicago, we can do it anywhere in the world. And the rest is history, obviously. Your father was left in charge of that task. To bring equity and justice to this city. And he's done a remarkable job carrying out that dream. And so we've worked hard to maintain that rite of passage, if you will, to protest and then to do it peacefully, nonviolent. And that is something that I'm regularly calling for in this city. And we've demonstrated even during the Democratic National Convention. Congressman, that people had a great deal of consternation, and they were wondering if a brand new mayor could handle a convention at a time in which we were calling for a ceasefire and the releasing of hostages with the war in Gaza. And we were able to do that, right, without a real incident. And so we have regularly called for the protection of the First Amendment right because of what it means for our nation, and more profoundly, the role that Chicago has had and peaceful nonviolent demonstrations. Right. And our police department has worked hard to ensure that folks' First Amendment rights are protected while also ensuring that people do it peacefully. And so we've been able to have areas, whether it's Grand Park or Daley Plaza or anywhere else along Michigan Avenue, where we've been able to effectively have multiple demonstrations and protests without the provocateurs. Now, the last thing that I'll say is I am fully aware that there are individuals that want to erode or derail our message. And our police department and other organizers are on the ground working hard to ensure that those individuals that are not here for peace and justice, that we root them out.
Let me just say, Your Honor, that, and I'll say it very publicly, I don't know anyone who has done it better than the mayor of the city of Chicago. The mayor's selection of the superintendent of police, they've done an extraordinary job. I also know that the elected officials who have rallied behind your efforts also have done an extraordinary job. So no critique or criticism from me whatsoever. In fact, y'all got my vote. The issue here in Los Angeles isn't the people who support the mayor, who agree that Donald Trump has overstepped his bounds. The issue is the graffitiites, the Molotov cocktails, the people who Donald Trump is seizing upon to justify even more troops with more lethality. And to me, it seems like the 1807 Insurrection Act isn't something we've quite wrapped our minds around, because Donald Trump, who has flirted with the idea of pardoning Derek Chauvin, who had his knee on the neck of George Floyd, and Pam Bondi have said they consider all of these actions pursuant to the Insurrection Act to be federal, which means the president has the power to pardon law enforcement officers who use lethality in these riots. It means that the president of the United States and Pam Bondi have the power to charge looters federally and not pardon them when they run through our stores or tear up our streets. And so the game changer here, for me at least, Your Honor, is the 1807 Act, if in fact he invokes it. And I would only plead with you as someone here on the ground for this week to please recognize that should Donald Trump use the 1807 Act, we will be ceding a considerable amount of local power and control, not due to our own willingness, but by virtue of the agent provocateurs who could bring great harm to the people of our communities.
Well, it's not lost on me, Congressman, of the real threat that we have here from provocateurs, and then the chief provocateur, which is President Trump. I mean, really, he sending, what he sent to my sister's city, Mayor Karen Bass, who's just done an exceptional job, really navigating the terrains. It was an act of escalation, militarizing the force. We do know that at least a judge temporarily has indicated that he acted outside of the Constitution. Of course, he'll appeal that to his control, the Supreme Court. But here's what I can say, is that at the height of the war in Gaza, the same concerns were brought before me. And this is why it's important that those who are organizing these protests, who want the message to be pure and kept with fidelity, that they also have a responsibility to work with my administration as well as with my superintendent, that when you see these individuals who are agitating intentionally to drown out and to detract our message, that we all have a responsibility. We know during the civil rights era and even before that, there were provocateurs. This is not, anything new. It's something that we have to be very vigilant around, because we do know that there is an administration that has been inimical to our interests, and that type of hostility we cannot provoke to give him that much more of a reason to erode our Constitution. So we're on it. We're paying obviously close attention to it, and we are going to continuously call for, as I've done, a peaceful protest in this moment that are nonviolent, because we know the effectiveness of those type of protests, because you and I would not be in the positions that we're in if those protests were not effective. So it's proof positive when we do it right, when we do it together, we can bring equity and justice to people across this land.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. When we come forward, the mayor of Chicago will offer the people of Los Angeles a word of hope, the people of Chicago a word of hope, and our nation a word of hope. Mayor Brandon Johnson is our very special guest when we come forward.
KBLA Talk 1580 is an intervention. When we come forward, includes you. KBLA Talk 1580, turning pain into power.
Hi, I'm LA City Councilman Curran Price, inviting you to join us on Saturday, June the 14th from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. as we cut the ribbon on the brand new Enel Woods Park at 8703 South McKinley Avenue. Thanks to a generous donation from Heal the Bay, the park features smart irrigation, stormwater capture systems, and space for local wildlife to thrive. And we've built a walking trail, picnic areas, native landscaping, and quiet spaces for families to gather, relax, and connect. This is part of a much larger effort to expand green spaces across South LA with 3 new parks in the works, a first-of-its-kind community center coming soon, and plans to connect it all through the South LA Greenway. So mark your calendar for Saturday, June 14th, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m., and come celebrate a greener, stronger South LA at NL Woods Park. I'm also pleased to sponsor the Climate Justice plus Black Health Symposium, moderated by Tavis Smiley, live on C-SPAN, Wednesday, June the 18th, from 4 to 7 p.m. at the Nate Holden Performing Arts Center. Just a reminder to sign up right away at the KBLA1580.com website to join me, Mayor Karen Bass, Congresswoman Sidney Kamlager Dove, Tennessee State Representative Justin Pearson, Dr. Cornel West, former Congressman Jesse Jackson Jr., the Sierra Club's Ben Jealous, and other Black influencers in the climate and health fields, as we continue to amplify the connection between climate and poor health outcomes for our people. Thank you for listening. I'm Councilman Curran Price.
Nearly 7 million Americans aged 65 and older are living with Alzheimer's disease, also known as AD, a type of dementia that affects memory, thinking, and behavior, making everyday tasks challenging. But did you know that Black adults aged 65 and older are twice as likely as white adults to develop AD? There are things you can do to help reduce your risk for developing AD. Managing conditions like diabetes and high blood pressure is crucial. Staying physically active, maintaining social connections, eating a healthy diet, and keeping your mind engaged with activities like reading or puzzles can all contribute to brain health. It's also important to recognize some common signs and symptoms of early AD, such as forgetfulness that causes problems with everyday life, asking the same question a few times in a row, and difficulty concentrating on basic tasks. If you see these signs in yourself or a loved one, don't wait. Early diagnosis and intervention are key to managing AD effectively. To learn more about AD and a potential treatment option, visit treatallzearly.com. That's treatallzearly.com. This message is brought to you by AZI.
My mom has decided to learn to paint, and she's good.
My dad's now into creative cuisine, and I've already put on 6 pounds.
Learning new things comes with age.
My mom, she started forgetting my name and what we're talking about.
Forgetting well-known things doesn't. Memory loss may be a sign of Alzheimer's disease. Early detection gives you and your loved one time to plan for the future. Learn the warning signs of Alzheimer's at 10signs.org. Brought to you by the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
Nationwide is so much more than a great insurance company. They're one of America's largest financial services companies. Like how I'm more than Saquon Barkley, the NFL's reigning leading rusher. I'm also the NFL's leading husher. Shh, hush up back there. Wow, I might have just set the hushing record. Well, almost. For your insurance and financial needs, Nationwide is on your side.
Nationwide Investment Services Corporation, member FINRA, Columbus, Ohio.
Heard any other talk radio lately that sounds anything like this? We didn't think so. You're listening to Unapologetically Progressive, KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Our very special guest is none other than the 57th mayor of the city of Chicago. Your Honor, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Thank you. This has been great, Jesse. I really appreciate the time.
I'm grateful for the full hour that you've given us, Your Honor. Your Honor, please share with, based on your experiences, your life works, a word of hope for the people of Los Angeles, and then we'll go to the word of hope for the people of Chicago and for the nation. What can you say to us?
Well, first of all, for the city of Los Angeles, a beautiful city that is a complexion, really, of our country, where immigrants and descendants of slaves have found refuge on the coast. And, the way our world is situated now, we have to have strong examples like Los Angeles, where the BIPOC community can collectively build power to bring about the progressive changes that our country needs. At a time in which we're fighting for our humanity and for the evolution of our democracy, having a strong space where people are safe and secure and loved and supported, we need places like that because Los Angeles provides us with hope. As much as I brag about the city of Chicago, the way the world opens up through the lens of people of Los Angeles, we have to have a strong Los Angeles and really a strong California to continue to ensure that progressive policies for working people can actually reach the rest of the world. So I am encouraged really by how the people of Los Angeles are standing up and resisting tyranny in this moment, as being on the front line of this fight for our Constitution and the evolution of our democracy. So remain vigilant and remain strong. You provide inspiration for all of us.
For the people of Chicago.
Yeah, look, for Chicago, Jesse, I've said this repeatedly and I'll say it again. My goal is to continue to build the safest, most affordable big city in America. When I said into office just a little bit over a couple of years ago, violent crime was spiking and people were just losing their way and still reeling from the conditions of the pandemic. And since I've been in office, we built 4,000 affordable homes, and there's 1,800 that are under construction. We'll have another 4,600 built within the next 15, 16 months. Violent crime continues to go down. The month of April, we had the fewest amount of homicides since 1962, one of the safest Memorial Day weekends in almost 2 decades. And so as 28% of homicides have gone down and 36% of shootings and 39% robberies, and as we continue to invest in our young people, 29,000 summer jobs, a 45% increase, expanding mental and behavioral health care services. 30 years ago, Mayor Harold Washington opened up the city of Chicago to all the possibilities of what a progressive city would look like where no one is left behind. We are carrying on that legacy, building an operation where Black, brown, white, Asian, young, old, this multicultural, intergenerational movement that we have been fighting for 40 years since, that we're finally able to take on that full second term of Mayor Harold Washington. So we're going to continue to keep hope alive, as Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. has said, and we'll continue to do that here. And I believe the greatest city in America, the city of Chicago.
Your Honor, and finally, our nation is confronting some very serious challenges at this hour. Our courts seemingly moving slow in the face of tyranny. We've lived through nearly 200 executive orders in 150 days. The campaign of retribution has been one that has dispirited a number of people, and they seemingly have lost hope. Can you share with us a word of hope for our nation at this difficult hour?
I'm thinking about Fannie Lou Hamer, who was born just a few miles outside of Salis, Mississippi, where my family is from. And when she came to the convention here in Chicago, she challenged the politics of that moment. And we have seen our democracy shift in a way that I don't know if people even thought it was even possible when we begin to take on this fight, to be visible and to be seen, to be heard, and to be supported. And we stand on some incredible shoulders, whether it's Fannie Lou or Ida B. Wells, Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, many of the critical leaders that made it possible for this moment to even exist. And so just like those before us that fought hard and stood firm and walked across a bridge demanding a United States of America, it is now this generation's turn and time. Just right to next door to me is where Dr. King stood on this very floor before it was even known or believed that a Black mayor could exist in the city of Chicago, and spoke power to power. That's exactly what we have to do in this moment. And I'm encouraged by the efforts all over this country, whether it's Seattle and Baltimore, Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, Chicago. You're not alone. There are other people in this country who agree with us. We just have to band together, build an operation that the generation that will come next will look back on this moment 100 years from now and know that we were the generation that took our turn to stand up to tyranny, to ensure that working people all over the world, immigrants and descendants of slaves, can come together and unite these states.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was the 57th mayor of the city of Chicago. Your Honor, thank you for joining us on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Thank you very much. Happy Father's Day. Happy Father's Day, everyone.
Happy Father's Day to you as well, sir. Have a great day, sir.
You too.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. We've had a very exclusive interview with the mayor of the city of Chicago. He's wearing the same shoes that Mayor Karen Bass is wearing, and Mayor Karen Bass is wearing the same shoes that Muriel Bowser is wearing, who's wearing the same shoes as the mayor of Detroit and other sanctuary cities who made room for the least of these during these very trying times in South America. These are people who pick our tomatoes, pick our lettuce. They are not all violent criminals. But our overwhelming response for a few men and women that somehow the FBI can't find, the Drug Enforcement Agency can't find, the United States Marshals Service can't find, somehow we need 700 Marines who have no training whatsoever in finding criminals, who don't have to follow habeas corpus, who don't need warrants when they engage in contacts with the civilian American population. It doesn't make sense. The FBI can find Al Capone. If the U.S. Attorney's Office can find Donald John Trump, if the U.S. Attorney's Office can find Jesse Jackson Jr., they can find men and women in this country who do not belong here, who are violent. It does not require the National Guard. It does not require the United States Marine Corps or the massive show of force that the 1807 Insurrection Act would represent. I admire the courage of Brandon Johnson, of Karen Bass, of other mayors who are stepping forward. I admire the courage of Senator Padilla, who was assaulted in Kristi Noem's office just the other day. I admire Congresswoman MacGyver, who was indicted, not for shoving or pushing people around, but for doing her job and the right thing. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. My gratitude to the mayor of the city of Chicago for spending this time with us. Until next time.